Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the United States of America. And also Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and his good old boys down south. So we know we trust their vote. And also I want to say bienvenidos to all of our followers in Latin America. Thank you so much for following Charlton and Big C Sports. And of course across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Thank you for following Big C Sports. And of course, my good old boys from Canada, we thank you so much, Canada. We really appreciate your love that you get from the Canadian border and north of that. But there's no one I love more than the land of the free and the home of the brave. For this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's a proud day, the celebration of Dr. King's, birthday, a holiday that was hard fought for by great entertainer like Stevie Wonder, who put so much work and effort along with other activists for many years, Charlton, to get this passed as a national holiday, a much deserved and celebrated holiday, not just for African Americans, Charlton, but for all Americans, because of what Dr. King did and sacrificed, Charlton. The ultimate, his life was lost in the struggle to create equality in America, and we still have a long way to go for equality. The struggles are only beginning every day. It will never end. It's an everyday struggle, but hopefully America can, at some point in our time, conquer this divide that we have and move as one great, strong nation.
Well, Big C, that's very well said. Today is it is January the 16th, 2017, and of course we honor the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and how much he meant to our country. In fact, just being downtown in Sacramento last night for the Sacramento Kings and the Oklahoma City Thunder, well, today Lester Holt, who's a native of Sacramento, California, actually grew up in a suburb called Rancho Cordova, and he's doing a program called Across America. And he's talking about a lot of what Dr. King talked about. How do people see this great country of ours? And there's so much that we love about this country. And even with saying that, Big C, I think a lot of times we take Dr. King for granted because the things that we talk about being able to enjoy all the time, he could not enjoy. Dr. King grew up in a segregated America. Dr. King grew up being beaten up by police officers and sprayed by water hose, and they even had attack dogs attack him just because he wanted to make it possible to vote. And that's the same great America. That's the land of the free and the home of the brave and the land that we all love. But Big C, I just want to get your thoughts. And you grew up in Jim Crow as well as I was at the end of Jim Crow. What was it like for Dr. King, as we all praise him now, but he was tortured by the American government? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he was tortured and persecuted by the American government. He was on the FBI's most wanted list.
Yeah.
J. Edgar Hoover watched everything that Dr. King did because he said that Dr. King was a threat to American society. He was a threat to American society the way American society existed. But he was not a threat to equality and peace in America.
Yeah.
And that's what the FBI wanted the rest of America to think that he was, Charlton.
Yeah.
But for him to take an American citizen, a law-abiding American citizen, what the government did to African Americans, as well as Dr. King in those days, were atrocities. It's like when you hear things on the news now, Senator John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, he made the comments against President-elect.
Yeah.
John Lewis was right side by side with Martin Luther King, Charlton, during his marches. So when somebody says that John Lewis is disrespecting somebody, he is not.
Yeah.
You would have to live John Lewis's life, go through the atrocities and beatings and persecutions that John Lewis has lived through. John Lewis is an outstanding American.
Yeah.
He represents his people who vote for him for over 2 decades, Charlton, in the Congress, representing America. But, for him to have gone through the back tongue lashing that he's gotten from the president-elect, that's totally disrespectful, Charlton.
Yeah.
Somebody who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, Charlton, never had to work a day in his life, never had to fight for any equality for himself or his people, Charlton. That's the disrespect. And I think about people saying disrespecting, President-elect.
Right.
Okay? What did he do for the first 6 years of the current president's term with this birther movement, saying that he was not American, he was not born here, that he falsified these types of total lies every day, Charles. And when you talk about disrespecting, you turn around and elect this person who led the ultimate disrespect charade in America and saying that somebody disrespects him, Charlie. I think there's an old saying, care about fair play.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay? Do unto others as you have them do unto you. This is what is occurring in this scenario. But he went into office with disrespect of many Americans. And I'll never think that this election wasn't racially divided, Charles.
Oh, yeah.
It was about so many Americans having to listen to a black man for 8 years being their commander-in-chief, the most powerful man in the world, and the world had never seen that, Charles, especially America, that you had to become second to this man.
Yeah.
And as far as race relations have always been in America. But he didn't run on race, Charles, he ran on equality. He ran on being an American citizen. It was a shame that so many people based it upon race.
Yeah.
And even the Congress, when they said after he was elected, they were going to do their due diligence to make him a one-term president. We're talking about the Republican Congress, Charles,
that
were elected by American citizens sitting here fighting against what the president was trying to do for all of America, is that they were so spent because this has been a good old boy network since time had begun.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden a black man was the most powerful man, and they spent 8 years trying to limit his power.
Well, Big C, that is very, very accurate. Today's segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive one, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And of course, we talked about Big C with all the mud, but it's so much snow back on the East Coast, Big C, and cold weather. I'm sure you have a lot of ice on it right now, Big C. Is that what you find now?
Well, we get a little bit of everything. We get ice in the morning, we get some dew in the afternoon. And
oh, yeah.
Just everything. It's a climate adjustable vehicle, Charles. So you will adapt to anything. But our current president has adapted anything. And I want to give you this one little spin, Charles. When the president-elect is talking about he's going to make America great again.
Yeah.
And he's going to turn things around. Our current president, Charlton, when he took over as president, the S&P in the stock market was at 6,700, not 67,000.
Yeah.
6,700. Today, when it closed on Friday, Charlton, that same S&P was at 19,800 and about 21.
Yeah.
Okay? So it has risen over 2,000 points in the stock market during his presidency. All-time record high. So when you talk about somebody's going to make it great, and see, all the numbers that exist now exist under his regime, not president-elect, under his regime. Roughly, America has made more money under this current president than any other time in history. So I'm going to be curious what happens if this stock market starts to plummet over the next 6 weeks to 6 months.
Yeah.
What's going to be the mindset of America now? Are we getting better or are we getting worse? You can't keep threatening everybody on Twitter. These are grown folks in the country. These are not little shops that you have individual contracts with. It's almost like it's like when a player holds out, Charlton. When they're in contract negotiations.
Yeah.
And we can go to Jerry Jones, and we did that with Emmitt Smith, over a decade ago. When the Cowboys had won a Super Bowl, and Emmitt Smith felt that his value was a little more.
You didn't want to pay him.
And Jerry Jones said, I don't have to pay you.
Yeah.
I can run anybody in the backfield.
Yeah.
You're not the team is you. All of a sudden, Dallas starts off 0-2. And the rest of the team is in Jerry Jones' ear.
Yeah.
Yes, you're the most powerful guy in Dallas, but you need everybody else, okay?
Yeah. And
that's basically the message that's going to the president-elect.
Yeah.
You might be the most powerful guy in the world, but you're going to need everybody else.
Well, it's a lot like Dr. King when he was giving his speech about the war in Vietnam. He spoke out against it, and he wanted to focus on the economy for African Americans, for all Americans, but particularly the ones who were discriminated against by our country. And that's something because we love America, and especially this year, there's so much talk about athletes standing up and holding their arms together, or just trying to stand in unity of this Black Lives Matter movement. And when you think about how much vitriol and hate black men take just for standing up for black lives, it seems, Big C. And here the great Dr. Martin Luther King, he, John Lewis shed his own blood just to get the right to vote. Donald Trump never did that. And Dr. King, he was jailed just because he wanted to have the right to vote. Donald Trump was never jailed. No white person was ever jailed but just because they wanted to vote in this country. However, when black Americans stand up against anything that still happens, whether it's tacit or overt, then a lot of people treat the common day African American the same way Dr. King was treated, and he was told to mind his own business when he spoke out against the war in Vietnam and so many of the things we take for granted now, Big C. I think there's a lot of it on standing in the African American Museum up in Washington, D.C., Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, when you even talk about that, Jonathan, look at our current First Lady, okay?
Yeah.
When she was out on the original campaign trail for her husband when he was running for president back in 2007, 2008, when he was on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
We're talking about a Harvard lawyer. That's what Michelle Obama is.
Yeah.
She's a Harvard-trained lawyer. She worked in corporate law, all right? So because she's such an intelligent woman that the average person can't speak on her level if she does not want them to, people were calling her uppity, that she was out, getting out of her place. She was just like any other corporate lawyer in America.
Yeah.
That's what she spoke about. And people couldn't understand that, so they said she was uppity because she's so intelligent. But she's not arrogant, Charles. She's an average, normal person who just happens to be the First Lady of the United States. We've never seen one like her before. We will never see one like her afterwards. When you think about what all she's done for women in America, Charles,
yeah,
and around the world for young girls, it's not about race, but for that gender, Charles.
Yeah.
She has extended herself. She's extended her home. She's created programs across the world, and especially here in the United States. She's been more in touch with American women and children than any First Lady in history, Charles.
Yeah.
They have all been there at the White House. They all don't want to get their hands dirty. She's right out there in the grassroots. She's more recognizable, Charles, than any First Lady in history.
Yeah.
Because she's part of our fabric of America. She is what true Americana is supposed to be. It's just like having a sports team. You recognize the figures on the team because that's what you want to be.
Yeah.
That's what you want to be in touch with. That's what the First Lady exuded, Jonathan. And I beg to see what America will face with over the next 4 years when it comes to a First Lady representing America, America's people, America's children, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Will she care? Will she be involved? Or will a designer gown mean more than going out to some grammar school, dealing with some young children, or going to a youth center, Jonathan,
yeah,
and dealing with some children, going to a third world country, helping these kids that are in need, these families, Jonathan. This is what I look to see. It's like we take a sports team, Jonathan, and we all recognize them for their holiday charitable contributions.
Yeah.
When they're giving out meals and they're giving out food bags and crates, Jonathan, to those needy families. This is what the First Lady represented. She represented doing that for America. Just like you see sports teams doing it for their community.
Yeah.
She did it for America.
Well, Big C, that's so important because when you think about the Obamas, President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, what Dr. King stood for and fought so hard for, and there's a lot of African Americans who shed their blood. And there were some white Americans that helped them too. We're not saying that they were absent of the struggle.
It was a unilateral defense to abolish segregation.
Yeah.
White, black, Hispanic, Asian. This was a country at one point coming together, trying to unite America. Yes, there was always pockets that have never wanted America united. Still today, there are pockets. We saw that in Congress with the fight against President Obama. And when we look at the Republicans, Charlton, they were 98% white in Congress. And they fought President Obama. Now, Congress was elected by the people, Charlton, to serve for them. But yet, they neglected serving for the people for their own personal benefit and desires, Charlton.
Yeah.
They let down America. President Obama didn't let down America. Congress let let down America, Charlton. The people that American citizens voted for to protect their rights and take care of their needs as a country, they let them down personally because they had racial epithets in their minds.
Yeah, and that's so true, Big C. Hopefully we can always overcome that. I want to say this segment is sponsored by the California Lottery. What can a buck do for you? Go out and be responsible when you spend money, trying to make money, and half of that goes to help the educational system. And Big C, I just want to bring this point up too, because we think about Dr. King when it's Dr. King's holiday and everything that he fought for, but think about what it's like to have your whole government against you. And when you're trying to do the right thing, which is have freedom and justice and liberty for all, and all those great things, at the King's game last night, it just kind of hit home. This all the time he had a dream, I have a dream speech, and how all people are treated the same and not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I looked at some of the Sacramento Kings at the Golden One Center last night and how we tie sports into politics. There was Rudy Gay, there was Anthony Tolliver, DeMarcus Cousins, Garrett Temple, Darren Collison, Aaron Afalo, Costa Coopers, Ty Lawson, Matt Barnes, Willie Cauley-Stein, Amari Caspery, Ben McLemore, and Malachi Richardson. We have Europeans, we have African Americans, we have Caucasians that represent the Sacramento Kings in the NBA team that's owned by, I believe he's from India, Rana Devi. Now you think about this. On the overhead monitor, and I'm sure they did it all over the country, when they were showing how we are all Americans, how we all want to be treated with respect and dignity, and to have these actual people hugging each other and doing 30-second to 60-second commercials, I contrast that with Jackie Robinson when he was being spat upon by his opponents just by integrating baseball, Big C, and Dr. King was coming up through that era. So I think a lot of times we think, okay, we're going to sing, we shall overcome together, we're going to all shake hands and give a hug, and we've done our part. But I just want people to be reminded, just like John Lewis, he shed blood. Donald Trump's father never had to be beaten by police officers or sprayed with water hose or had attack dogs sent on him just because he tried to vote. So when he ostracizes himself from John Lewis, I think it's also so disgraceful. Instead of saying, let's sit down and dialogue and see how I can make amends for being such a bigot and a racist running against the Obamas, the way he did, Big C. He didn't do that, didn't have the character to even do that. But I know Dr. King, he always said turn the other cheek, but sometimes you can't turn the other cheek. You got to be able to fight back, Big C. And I know for people who complain about whether Donald Trump is the legitimate president or not, if you don't vote, then you're part of the problem. You got to vote more than complain. But Big C, I just want to say I appreciate so much about Dr. King and what he meant for all of us. There would not be a Big C Sports if we did not have the Voting Rights Act passed by Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1964. Now, I know they hated Dr. King speaking out against the war, but it takes everybody to make America great. That's what our Constitution calls for, so that we can form a more perfect union. Before we get to the NFL football, Big C, I just want to get your thoughts again on how much it meant to you to see the African American Museum back in D.C., Big C.
Well, Charlton, you spoke about Jackie Robinson, which he's in there with a statue and a display of his sports paraphernalia. But there's also another poignant statue in there, Charlton, of John Carlos and Tommy Hines.
Yeah.
1968 Olympics, after winning, the 200 meter in Charlton, and standing there holding their fist up in the air, giving the Black Power salute.
Yeah.
For them thinking about their culture, Charlton, and putting their culture on the world stage, they were banned from amateur competition for life, for making a symbolic symbol, not making a sound, just lowering their head and raising. And this is the same thing that people went after Colin Kaepernick on. Because you make a symbolic stance, that all of a sudden you're anti-American. No, Charlton, you're representing your culture and your beliefs. And only the African-American culture, Charlton, over time, have been admonished. That they're the only culture that has been admonished for representing themselves or giving thought or praise to their own culture.
Yeah.
And walking through the Museum of African American History, it starts in the year 1400, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's where it started, at the auspices of slavery, when it started.
Yeah.
And it walks you through the history. It walks you through America's time. You know, and I want to bring this up, and not to make light of it, y'all, but there was an incident in Chicago 2 weeks ago where there was a hate crime, and the last hate crime, a
Yeah.
And he was artistic. And it was an atrocity, Charlton. It was an embarrassment of American society. But I looked at this one incident, Charlton, and like I said, I'm not making light of it because it was wrong.
Yeah.
They were damn wrong for what they did to this young man, okay?
Yeah.
But, you know, in retrospect, and I'm not saying tit for tat, but when you walk through this museum of African American history,
Yeah.
and you look at the atrocities that have been gone on against African American culture through history, where you can hang a black man, and I'm not talking about in the 1800s, Charlton, I'm talking about in the 1900s.
Yeah.
You can hang him from a tree, and everybody stood around and took pictures with it, Charlton.
Yeah.
It was a sense of pride for whites to do these things to blacks, and they said, well, times have changed. Times have not changed in America, Charlton. They have not. They're just not as open with things as they once were. Even in the 90s, Charlton, there were lynchings down in Texas of African American men by white men.
Wow.
Okay? And so times really have changed. There was an African American man, Charlton, in 1993 that was beaten by white men. They chained to the back of their pickup and drugged.
I remember it down in Texas.
And his body was, you know, torn limb from limb, dragging him up and down the street. This is 1993, Charlton. We're talking 27 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay? 24 years ago. That's how recent things are that were in the press. So, you know, America has a long way to go. And I'm not saying that anybody is right for putting anything painful, dubious, heinous on any other person or culture, Charlton.
Yeah.
But this is America, and America has to represent all of this. But, you know, I look at when we talk about sports. And, you know, Colin Kaepernick was treated like Jackie Robinson for making the stance. Okay? He was treated like John Carlos and Tommy Hines for taking a stand. I wonder if Colin Kaepernick had stood in front of the media when they all want to stick a mic in his face and say, you know, when I get off the team bus, I see a woman, I want to go grab her in the crotch and kiss her in the mouth and then go in the locker room and have a hell of a game.
Well, Big C.
I wonder what America's reception of him would have been at that point.
Yeah.
If he said he wanted to sexually molest women in public, would they have been okay with it?
I think he would have been arrested, Big C. Ironically, that just happened. There's a march coming up. It's for women all across the country. I think it's a women's march, and I was talking to some women about that and how a lot of this sexual assault that still goes on. A lot of people, whether you like Donald Trump or not, you know, that's not a good. It's called a crime when you do that. And for guys in the sports business, when men who play sports do that, they want to have an investigation. They want to suspend the guy, whether it's college or professional. They want to get this guy counseling and do so many other things. They don't vote him to become the president of the United States. And you can lie and forget that you did it all you want to, Mr. Trump. But now you represent the United States of America. It's not just you and your money. And something I want to bring up too about athletes. We don't have to always agree. And there's something that happened, and I wasn't there, so I can't say, but Jim Brown met with Donald Trump, the same Donald Trump that was criticizing President Obama, you know, questioning whether he was black or not. The same Donald Trump that's insulting to John Lewis and saying that he's a fake patriot, and John Lewis gave his blood so guys like Jim Brown could vote. And you have guys like Steve Harvey, they're all meeting with Donald Trump now. And I don't know what kind of photos they have on these guys, but they all come out and say the same guy that wants to do stop and frisk on their kids and grandkids, hey, he seems to be a good guy. And it's a shame because all they talk about is he wants to invest money into a community. So it's okay if you think the president's illegitimate and you want to criticize the first lady by calling her a wife of an illegitimate president, Big C. But it's a shame that guys like Jim Brown and Steve Harvey and all these guys that have made it, if you give them enough money, they'll turn and say anything you tell them to say. It's sung and danced. And I know Jim Brown's been an icon in the black American community, but tell that to all the kids that have been incarcerated over the stop and frisk mentality. And now you're shaking this man's hand when he has always telling the black communities that you're for sale, I'll give you enough money, and then I'm okay. I think that's the wrong message. Maybe I'm wrong by saying it, Big C, but it is real talk. Am I outside the box, Big C? Your thoughts?
You know, Charles, all you had to do was listen to Donald Trump's words during the campaign. He said, look at your situation now, black America. What do you got to lose by dealing with me? And so many of them bought into that. What do you have to lose by dealing with me? You can't get no, and it's in line, you can't get no worse than what you are. You know, that's what he told them. And so
or Dr. King.
And made a stance to say, hey, we're not going to settle for this, because that was the rhetoric, Charlton, in the 60s. Look at where you are now. You can't do no worse than what you are. You're at the bottom of the pool.
Yeah.
Donald Trump used rhetoric from the 60s. From the 50s and the 60s. That's the rhetoric that Donald Trump used to the African Americans who followed him and believed him. And the ones that, if you look at the ones who come into his office now, and I'll take one today, Charlton, that was a total embarrassment, okay?
Yeah.
It was Martin Luther King III, Dr. King's son, okay?
Yeah.
Met with Donald Trump today on his father's holiday, all right, of all days. But, when you're in the Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C., Charlton,
yeah.
When you have memorabilia from everyone, from Sojourner Turner to Nat Turner, Sojourner Truth and Nat Turner,
yeah.
Billie Holiday, Muhammad Ali, just great icons to African American history, Charlton, okay? There's nothing in there of Dr. King. Why? Because his sons are fighting over money over his memorabilia.
Yeah.
His Bible, his Nobel Peace Prize, and other artifacts of his, Charlton. His kids, his sons, not his kids, but his daughter would, but his sons fought her and is tied up in court. His sons have fought donating anything because they want the money for it.
Wow.
So he's in that meeting with Donald Trump. It's all about money. It's not about the advancement of colored people like his dad.
Yeah.
It's about the advancement of himself. And I thought it was the ultimate embarrassment to his father's legacy. As hard as his father fought, and his father ultimately gave his life for the perseverance and advancement of colored people in America. Not just colored people, but women also, Charlton. That his son, on his father's celebration day, goes in and meets with this man who says African Americans are nothing. And he has said this throughout time, Charlton.
Yeah.
He tried to get the death penalty for 5 young African American men. At one point in New York, there was falsely accused of rape.
Yeah, he even took out a full-page ad. Yeah.
On the New York Times.
And
this is the type of man that you want to go sleep with. Donald Trump, and I'm going to say who he is. King's in there, Jim Brown's in there, Steve Harvey's in there. But Steve Harvey just last week was making racial jokes, Charlton, against Asians.
Yeah.
Coming into America.
Yeah.
So you see what his stance is. I'm going to make racial jokes against Asians.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hang out with Donald Trump. So what is Steve Harvey?
Well, it's like the Dr. Martin Luther King, the late Dr. King. He was not for sale. A lot of guys now, I've heard pimps do this to women sometimes. They say, what's your price? And some women say, I would never do that. I would never do the oldest profession in the world. And some men say, what's your price? Sometimes it's a big diamond ring. Sometimes it's a dollar bill that has a couple of zeros behind it. And when it comes to men that are willing, they were also, this thing about slavery, it wasn't just,
There was a movie with Demi Moore.
Yeah.
Robert Redford, Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
Called One Night Stand.
Yeah.
Where Robert Redford was this very wealthy man. They were in Vegas.
Yeah.
And he said, what would it take for me to spend one night with your wife?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it went to $1 million.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a price. But this is the scenario that everybody has a price. When you look at the cabinet that's been put together under the president-elect,
yeah.
Okay, we're talking about billionaires. Now, when we talk about the layman voting person in America, whether he's an athlete, whether he's an architect, whether he's a dictionary, Charlton, whether he's a farmer, okay, they're not in the same class as these people.
No.
And nor will these people ever come sit at their house and have dinner. All right, they might go to an athlete's house and have dinner, but the layman person who voted for change in America, draining the swamp, if you don't drain the swamp, Charlton, you'll drown in the swamp. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And so when you put billionaires in charge of America, yes, these people have made money for themselves, okay, and they've made money for their constituents.
Yeah.
But how much money these people that voted for, how much money have they made for them? This is the thing that people don't get. You can sit up and threaten people through Twitter and things like this, saying that I'm going to save jobs in America. Even today, the threat went out against, German car makers.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so you're going to tell every American that drives a BMW, that drives a Mercedes, you got to give up your car.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wealthy Americans who drive these, Charlton. Okay? A lot of them. So you're telling these people that they can no longer get service on their car because you don't like the country now.
Yeah, that's funny how you got to always realize that there's always a price to pay for everything. I just want to say this segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. And also, I want to tell everybody we're looking for 1,000 insurance brokers to put back to work because we simply want to keep America's working. And Big C, I just want to bring this point up again too, and not knocking what happened with Jim Brown and Steve Harvey. I wasn't in the room, but I know they look like the same guys that are racially profiled, and they want to bring that back, even though it's ruled unconstitutional. Donald Trump wants to bring it back. They're not to get blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids who do the same or more amount of drugs as any other black kid I've ever known, even in college, Big C. But the thing is, slavery wasn't just about Europeans wrestling up Africans and bringing them to the Western Hemisphere, Big C. They were actually, a lot of people were captured in wars, and they were sold by other Africans into the Europeans, Big C. So that's part of reality. But to have someone like Jim Brown, who's counseled guys that were in gangs and guys that needed some help growing up, how to live the right way, and these guys, and especially a lot of them in Los Angeles, they looked up to him. Now he was a kind of a father figure in a sense, a prodigal father for a lot of these guys. Now we have the same guy, Jim Brown, loving up on Donald Trump the same way Mitt Romney was too, because he talked about giving them some money. That's the same thing that gets women to work the street because some guy promises them more money. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't see Harry Edwards doing that. I don't see a lot of other guys. I don't see Dr. King. He didn't cower down to the same people that said, look, we'll give you money as long as you shut up.
Well, Charlton, I don't see the NAACP. I don't see the African Black Caucus, doing this. I see people making a stance, and not just blacks, Charlton. I see whites. I see Americans making a stance. Right now, Donald Trump has about a 30% approval rating from America. Now,
yeah.
These are the same people who elected him, but he's down to 30% approval rating because.
Oh no! His approval rate is much higher in Russia, Big C, than the United States. Just so you know, okay? Much higher in Russia.
But people thought that we might grow up.
Yeah.
Once we elected him and become a grown man instead of this little boy on social media.
Yeah.
And we can't run the world on social media, Johnson. You can't just throw out these lambasted threats and thoughts.
Yeah.
Without having some father to them.
And imagine if John Lewis were to say, I'm gonna grab women by the crotch, and I'm gonna stick my mouth down their throat, and whenever I want to, I get away with it. Imagine if that were John Lewis, or imagine that was some other prominent person of color. Imagine if that was President Obama that was going around grabbing white ladies by the crotch, sticking his tongue down their throat, and said, I'll get away with it because I'm rich. Imagine if that were him doing that. There's no way the media would be in love with him the way they are with him now. And I just want to bring this up because everybody says give Donald Trump a chance. And as he's our president, there's nothing we can do about it other than the next 4 years. And you can give him a chance, but he's never atoned for how he racially divided this country going after President Obama. He's never atoned for that. He always says, give me a chance. But when is he going to go out and tell young black men and women that he was wrong, that he used this racial divide that works? Look at the documentary 13th. It's always worked, Big C. It has always worked, but he has not atoned for that with President Obama. And now we're going to see President Obama being gracious, on the 20th and just whatever he's going to do, shake his hand or whatever. But we know that was wrong. And how do you give someone respect when they don't earn it, Big C? And I'll get your last thought before we get into the world of sports, Big C.
When you talk about being professional, having etiquette, being of character, this is what we've seen for the last 8 years in America.
Yeah.
In no time has any president had to go through this lambasting that he has gone through from his constituents.
Yeah.
From the people who he's supposed to work across the aisle with, people that he was supposed to help represent America with, who refuse to work in cohesion with him, Charlton. This is what we have had. But Donald Trump has not even become president, and everybody thinks that he's done great things for America, Charlton. When you think about when President Obama took over as president, the unemployment rate in America, Charlton, was at 11%.
Yeah.
11%. It is at 4.1 right now. From 11% to 4.1. People would keep talking about when he put the country in debt. Well, he inherited a couple of wars, Charlton, that he could not stop right away. And so that debt was automatically likely going to occur because of those wars, Charlton. But when I think about the unemployment in America that's down at 4.1% right now, Charlton, you know, that he took 7 points, over 7, it was 3.4, and it's down at 4.1. And I think about that as far as representing the American people, giving them hope, Charlton.
Yeah.
There was a housing crisis in America when he took over. Americans were losing houses faster than McDonald's was losing meals out the window. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, thousands of homes are gone every day. People were uprooted, Charlton, tossed into the street. These were the people that were Americans, Charlton. We were becoming a third world country. He stopped the slide, Charlton. Think about the number of Americans he was able to keep in homes. He couldn't keep everybody in their home, Charlton.
Yeah.
But he saved so many homes and families in his fight. And people said he was wrong for bailing out the banks, Charlton. He had to bail out the banks because that's where the money was. Okay? And until they could become stabilized, the rest of America couldn't get back what was owed to them.
Yeah.
He saved the auto industry, Charlton. You know, we see Trump talking about telling Ford and GM they can't build these plants in Mexico that already exist. This is the thing they don't tell people. They already exist.
Yeah.
Those plants do, okay? President Obama saved the American auto industry. And in saving the American auto industry, that was 180,000 jobs unilateral by itself. 180,000 Americans kept their job. That means their kids were able to stay in their beds.
Yeah.
They were able to eat at night, Charlton. They were able to stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer because of what President Obama did for that industry.
Yeah.
But it was very extensive and expansive. He did this, Charlton. He wasn't talking about 700 jobs. He wasn't talking about 400 jobs.
Yeah.
This is 180,000 jobs, Charlton. This is what President Obama did in this industry that somebody now is threatening.
Yeah.
Instead of cooperating and working with them.
Well, you know,
this is like having a sports team where the quarterback said, I'm not going to call the plays that the coach says in, and the defense said, we're going to do what we want to do like the Minnesota Vikings did a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And got blown out in the game.
Well, ironically, I've heard some college kids, you know, over the weekend saying how they want to repeal Obamacare and they're going to come up with a better plan. You should always have a plan in place before you repeal anything. And a lot of these kids that are in college are saying, oh my God, now I can't be on my parents' health care anymore. I just think there's a lot of bad things going on when people let you get away with anything.
It took 6 years for Obamacare to pass. Okay?
Yeah.
6 years. And ever since Obamacare has been in place, the Republicans have stopped working in the Senate and in the House.
Yeah.
Said all we're going to do is repeal Obamacare. Day one, he's out of office, we're going to repeal Obamacare. Now, for the last 2 years, you've heard repeal. You haven't heard any plan put in place that is going to replace this. That's like when you fire a head coach from a football team like the 49ers and fire a head coach,
Yeah.
fire GM.
Yeah.
You still don't have a plan.
Yeah.
So we've done this 3 years in a row, and you still don't have a plan. Nobody wants the job.
I know.
McDaniels from New England said, no, hell no, I don't want to do that.
No,
I want to lead that organization and play football.
Yeah.
And go to that crap shoot.
Yeah.
I don't need that head coaching job. I've done it once before.
No.
I'd rather stay with a winner than go out here and be fired in 2 years like everybody else.
And in fact, speaking of a winner, as we dive into a little bit of the NBA before we close out with NFL football, I just want to say that we have the Golden State Warriors tonight hosting the Cleveland Cavaliers. That game's going to be at Golden State, sold out crowd, of course, and should be a great way to celebrate the Dr. Martin Luther King holiday season. And I'm telling you, the Golden State Warriors, they got to find a way to beat Cleveland. I think they've lost 4 in a row now to Cleveland. Utah is a 5.5 points favorite over Phoenix. Golden State is actually 7-point favorite over Cleveland. And the Clippers, they are actually a 7-point favorite over Oklahoma City that was here in Sacramento last night. And I tell you, Westbrook with another triple-double. The guy's simply amazing. You have Boston and Charlotte, Denver playing Orlando, Indiana playing New Orleans, Milwaukee and Philadelphia, Washington and Portland and New York playing Atlanta. And so great NBA basketball going on tonight, Big C. But there's nothing like going into the world of the NFL and the playoffs. And I know we talk so much about the playoffs. This is what I love about NFL football is anything goes. You never know who's going to win the game. I look at a game last night where the Kansas City Chiefs had home field advantage up until, at least for the first game. They bring in the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had to travel into very cold weather, that had just come off a playoff win versus the Miami Dolphins. Le'Veon Bell over 170 yards rushing. Andy Reid was 18-2 after a bye week. Now he's 18-3 after a bye. Actually 19-3 after a bye. The Steelers didn't score a touchdown, but they still found a way to get the win. Your thought, Big C?
Well, Charlie, this is one of those games that, it was a back and forth puzzle. Kansas City played the great defense. Pittsburgh got the ball inside the 25-yard line, Charlie, 7 times last night.
Yeah.
And Kansas City's defense was able to keep them out of the end zone, Charlie, scoring a touchdown. But, field goals, this came down for field goal battle. Kansas City had a chance to make the game on a 2-point conversion, Charlie, but James Harrison, being 38 years old,
he's amazing.
Applying the pressure, to Alex Smith, and Fisher had the holding offensive tackle, and it took them out of the scenario where they had a run-pass option,
yeah,
where they only had a run option, and they didn't convert on that 2-point conversion, Jonathan. This is what playoff football is all about. When you think about the intensity, the intangibles that come along in these games, one play can make the difference in these playoffs. Kansas City had opportunities, Jonathan, early in the game.
Yeah.
To really get in zone, but Pittsburgh's defense was equal to the task also. And when you get these physical struggles that you look for at this time of the year, Charlton, in the playoffs, and that's what you had. But the difference, Charlton, was Le'Veon Bell. Everyone talks about Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
But Le'Veon Bell, Charlton, set a playoff rushing record last night of 171 yards. In the game, in that frigid weather and slick field in Kansas City. And he was the difference in controlling the ball. Kansas City has been so decimated this year, Charlton, on defense. They've lost their 2 inside linebackers. They've lost a quarterback. They've lost a defensive lineman. And to get as far as they've had this season, very commendable with Andy Reid and that offense. Tyreek Hill made a big difference. At the halfway point of the season when he got infused into that offense. Alex Smith has been consistent. But this is part of Andy Reid's coaching history, Charlton.
Yeah.
Once he made it to the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles against the New England Patriots, they lost that game. Terrell Owens had a heck of a game coming back off a broken foot.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have enough, in the fourth quarter to, climb back into that game. But Andy Reid can get you to the dance. He's just having a problem making the dance.
Well, that's so true. And I look at a lot at Coach Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's some talk about one of the receivers, I think it was Antonio Brown, and how they were recording what he was saying about the New England Patriots. And, some locker room talk, Big C. They weren't grabbing anybody by the crotch, but it was some locker room talk that he gave about the
yeah. You said locker room talk, and Donald Trump said locker room talk.
Yeah, it was different, huh?
There was no oratory about putting your tongue down some woman's throat, grabbing in the crotch, doing sexual misconduct to her, okay? There was never any of that. We heard live from Antonio Brown, who one of the things that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to broadcast the locker room to the outside world. You can hear things, but this was live on FaceTime or Snapchat, whatever it was.
Yeah.
He broke the cardinal rule, man, and I imagine there will be some sort of consequences from the organization in doing that. Back in the old days when the coach would come around, all the players went into one area of the locker room.
Yeah.
And now, because we got these new millennium ball players, and you and I have talked about this a lot, how do you bring in some 60, 70-year-old coach who can identify with an Antonio Brown or other players like them, Charlton? Kelsey, the tight end from Kansas City. With the things that he was saying, I can't see him not being suspended, Charlton.
Yeah, that was over the top.
At least the first 2 games of the season. It was over the top what he said about officials.
Yeah, and Kelsey's the one that cost his team a 15-yard with the personal foul because he pushed a defender for just standing there after defending him. It's the little things that count in these big games. They lost because they did not complete the 2-point conversion, but there are also, he just didn't have a great game. But, do your talking on the field, not just to the referee. The referee is going to do their part, but you got to make plays if you're a player. If not, there's nothing to complain about. I also want to say this segment is sponsored by United Labor Guaranteed $100,000 life insurance. And we also work with all of the unions in the country under the AFL-CIO, and we are endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. We're looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers because we simply want to put people back to work. Big C, another good game that was just, it's better than the game itself. The fact that, I'll just bring up the fact that the Patriots blew out the Texans. I thought they'd win by 3 touchdowns. I was off by 2. They won by 18 points. And when you look at that, the great Brock Osweiler, I don't even know how he plays NFL football. They've given him so much praise for a guy that doesn't produce. And in the game, you think about what he did numbers-wise, 23 of 40. He had 3 interceptions and 198 yards passing. 3 interceptions. That's almost one every quarter. And he's still getting $73 million in his contract. And anybody that can make it great, make it. But I still don't know why he's such highly praised, Big C. But New England obviously took care of that game rather easily. It'll be a lot more difficult when they take on Pittsburgh. But the great Tom Brady had a good game playing against them. He was 18 of 38, two interceptions and 187 yards. So he even had picked a couple of times. But it's the running game and the defense and the discipline that helps New England win. Your thoughts on that game, Big C?
Well, we're talking, I look at Brock Osweiler, and he had a typical Brock Osweiler performance. You're a starting quarterback in the NFL, and you only average 5 yards per completion. You get that from a running back, okay?
Yeah.
The league leading rusher, Ezekiel Elliott, averaged 5.3 yards every time he touched the ball.
Yeah.
Brock Osweiler averaged 5.1 yards per completion. In this game, you're not going to win anything as an NFL quarterback with those type of lackluster numbers, Charles.
And he threw 19 interceptions this year, Big C. 19 interceptions is what you get for $73 million.
Well, but this is a chance to get to the Super Bowl, Charles, and this is the best that you can do. But, you know, the true story of this game was Deion Lewis, the young running back for New England. When you think about the game, Charles, that he set an NFL record. You know, he scored on a rushing touchdown, he scored on a kick return, and a receiving touchdown, Charles. The first back in playoff history in modern NFL era to do that.
Yeah.
And when you think about Deion Lewis and the road he had to take to get to this point in the NFL, as a freshman at the University of Pittsburgh, Charles, he broke Tony Dorsett's freshman rushing record over 1,600 yards.
Yeah.
But ironically, a year and a half later, he was replaced by another great back. Sean McCoy beat him out after he had an injury. He couldn't get his starting job back anymore, Charles.
Yeah.
And so both of these guys are having stellar NFL careers going on. But, you know, the performance that Deion Lewis did, and Dennis Bart was a little banged up, so he didn't get much playing time. But he came into this game, and he put New England on his shoulders. And when you look at New England's offense, Charles,
yeah,
this was one of the least games Tom Brady ever had as a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looked very possessive. People talked about him being the league MVP. You know, a lot of question marks will be put up if those votes are not in after this game. You know, Houston has a tremendous defensive team.
Yeah.
Romeo Crennel, okay, was the architect of the New England defense in their first 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So he's very well versed with what they run offensively, and he knows Tom Brady. You know, he left there and took a head coaching job in Cleveland like every other, no success. But he moved on to the Chiefs. Then when Reed got the job, he moved on to the Texans as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But when you look at this stellar defense that Texas has had the past couple of years, even J.J. Watt was, you know, 2-time defensive player of the year, playing under Romeo Crennel.
Yeah.
He talked about it as a potential MVP.
Yeah.
So he understands what New England can do. If he had a quarterback and Savage hadn't been under concussion protocol, this may have been a much different game. Well,
Big C, and that's true too. But obviously, New England, they're always. I think this is when you go to the NFC, actually AFC Championship game. I think this is number 11 for Tom Brady. I may be wrong about that, but 11 times they've been in the AFC Championship game since he's been there. So just a remarkable run by the Patriots. But I want to bring this game up to the Atlanta Falcons with a 36-20 win over the Seattle Seahawks. And I know they're missing Thomas in the secondary, but Julio Jones is such a great receiver. Matt Ryan's kind of a hot and cold quarterback. I don't have a lot of confidence in him going into a game, but he did have a good game against Seattle. When you look at Matt Ryan's numbers, he was 26 of 37, no interceptions, 338 yards against the Legion of Boom. And then Wilson just had an off game, 17-30, 2 interceptions, only 225 yards. But I want to bring up this point against a strong defense, the Legion of Boom. Atlanta had 422 total yards of offense. That's a lot to put on that Seattle defense. That was the reason they got as far as they got. And I just think Atlanta, there's something about that dome. The crowd, I think they were drinking extra moonshine down south, Big C. Your thoughts on that game coming up against Green Bay?
Well, let's go back to this game, Charles. In fact, on paper, yes, Atlanta did outplay Seattle.
Yeah.
But the difference in that game, Charlton, was a special team.
Oh, yeah.
Look at what they took away from Devin Hester in that game, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
On three different occasions, okay?
Yep.
Devin Hester had a 77-yard punt return, Charlton, in the first quarter of that game, okay? That had them down at the 8-yard line. Unfortunately, there was a penalty on the play. That happened at the line of scrimmage.
At the line of scrimmage, I know that.
Long before he ever got close to the ball, Charlton, which resulted in an 84-yard penalty against Seattle. It was a 9, it was 84 yards of field difference in that penalty, Charlton. On the 2 plays later, a rookie backup offensive lineman steps on the quarterback Russell Wilson's foot.
Yeah.
He falls over to the end zone, takes a safety, Charlton. That right there was a 9-point swing.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. Yep.
That was a 9-point swing. Instead of Seattle going up, 2 touchdowns, they ended up being down 9 points because they lose the touchdown plus get it with the safety. And then subsequently, the next return has to get out the mission all over again, Charlton. Each one of his great returns were called back. Now, that's field position and momentum. Atlanta won the game. Straight out, they won. They dominated on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But when you take away those 3 big plays from Devin Hester, the complexion of the game changes.
It changed.
Seattle being up 17-6,
Yeah.
And being down.
Well, I tell you, Big C, it shows that you can only run for so long. Seattle's been on top for a long time in the NFC Championship game, and every now and then you got another team that steps in, just like Green Bay. They've been on top for such a long time, so that game coming up, it should be the last game at the Georgia Dome, Big C. What a great stadium. It's amazing they're going to tear it down, but when you look at the new one, man, that's like going from the regular Chevy up to the Escalade. That new stadium is going to be gorgeous, the Mercedes-Benz Dome. This final segment is sponsored by Athletic Insurance. With Big C Sports, we can cover any professional or collegiate athlete or even your local mom and pop soccer teams. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. Yes, go ahead, Big C.
Mercedes Dome, they may have to change the name when you talk about the president-elect talking about putting a tariff on German cars.
Don't.
It was a German car, so they might have to take that name off and make it the Ford Dome instead of the Mercedes Dome.
Well, don't give him any ideas. He may call it the Trump Dome, Big C. He says money talks, and speaking of money, I just want to say, I want to give you a little pat on the back, Big C. I know you sip a lot of moonshine down south. You say it makes you more clairvoyant. But you did say that Dallas lost the Super Bowl when they put Tony Romo in the lineup and they broke the chemistry in Philadelphia. And I was kind of saying, well, maybe not. But I actually agree with you. You can't take a locomotive that's going full speed and then slow it down and expect it to start fast. Dallas had 3 weeks off. Their first team defense and offense had 3 weeks off, as he took the guy that put the glue in the engine, he put the oil in the engine. That was Prescott, who had a great game against Dallas, but you killed the momentum. Jerry Jones was so eager to get Tony Romo in the game, and there were even people tweeting, can we get Tony Romo in there? And they have no idea how he only won 1 game in 12 years. There's no reason for him to even be in a uniform when it comes to that. I think you're right. They did destroy the chemistry. Dallas didn't get started until late in the third quarter, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
When you think about this, Charlton, they hadn't played really as a unit for 3 weeks. The offense hadn't, Charlton.
Yeah.
They were down 21-3, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, 21-3.
21-3, and that's because the offense hadn't been together in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it took them a while, Charlton, to figure things out. I don't care how many years of pro you are, you just don't walk out there. But those 2 rookies, Charlton, played their butts off in this game, okay?
Yeah.
But they really did. They went tit for tat with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has just been a Superman, Charlton. He has been a Superman over the last 2 months. 27 touchdowns and I believe 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Over the last 8 weeks, Charlton, of the NFL season.
Yeah.
This got him, and those are the same numbers Russell Wilson had last year. Remember the last 8 weeks, where he was 30-3 over the last 8 weeks of the season. But Aaron Rodgers, you look at him, Charlton, and he has ice water rolling through his veins.
Yeah.
I look at that last pass that he threw to
oh my goodness, Cook.
The tight end on
Yeah.
the sideline.
Yeah.
When he threw the ball running the wrong way, you're not supposed to throw the ball that accurate across your body, running to your left when you're a right-handed quarterback. But he threw a seed. I mean, it looked like a baseball pitcher throwing, that the catcher is giving him a strike zone hit. And he hit it, Charlton. No one else would have ever made that play in the NFL. And when you think about plays that Aaron Rodgers has made in the last 2 weeks, Charlton, the one at the end of the first half against the New York Giants, where he threw the touchdown to Cobb, which you got 5 defensive backs in that general area, but yet he throws a touchdown. He did it last year, Charlton, against the Cardinals. Yeah. When he threw the touchdown to Jordy Nelson, late in the game. But, that pass and him, but even before that, Charlton, there was a play that happened 2 plays prior to that, which was the most critical play in the game. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers was sacked on that play. The average quarterback would have gave that up as a fumble. He was drilled in the back. You could see the pain and the grimace on his face. Yeah. But he had the presence of mind to turn around and face the official and call a timeout because he knew the time was of the essence. He knew the time was of the essence. And I want to give you another parallel on that play when he called a timeout. Yeah. The Dallas Cowboys had a timeout, Charlton, okay? Yeah. And they got a first down. What did Jason Garrett do? He singled in from the sideline to down the ball, to spike the ball into the ground. Yeah. What he put them was in a 2nd and 10. Instead of using the timeout, Charlton, where they would have had a 1st and 10. Yeah. Now they're scrambling with only 2 downs, trying to get 2 yards, and they had to settle for the game-tying field goal. Yeah. When he had a chance to put his team on the lead, everybody was surprised that this was a Jason Garrett call, not to use the timeout, but to spike the ball and only give the team 2 downs instead of 3. Yeah, I thought that was bad. He said, let me burn the timeout. Yeah. This is all that matters. Down the field. But he had a 3rd down and 22, Charlton. Yeah. A 3rd and 22. And he completes a 30-yard pass. On a rope. Yeah, on a rope, yeah. This gives you the presence of an Aaron Rodgers. The Dallas Cowboys didn't lose that game, Charlton. They got beat, okay? Yeah. They didn't lose that game. They got beat by a better team on that day, which we had talked about. Aaron Rodgers, if you give him a chance, you better play for 61 minutes, not 61 minutes, because he got it all. And Mason Crosby, 2 51-yard field goals back-to-back. Oh, that was ice. He was ice. That's unflappable, and this is what professionals do. And when, I see these sideline reporters say, Coach, what do you do? This is what they're paid to do. Yeah. Don't tell me what I did. This is what they're paid to do. And I can't explain to a grown man what to do. And you know what's wonderful about what Green Bay is doing? They're scoring 30 points in all of their games. They scored 30 points over Detroit to get the division, to win the division. They got 38 points against New York just last week, Big C. And then they put 35 points on the board against the Dallas Cowboys. Down there, actually 34 points against the Cowboys down at Jerry Jones Plaza. And I just want to say that we talked about how great Rodgers was, and Prescott had a great performance. That guy, it's amazing how much flack he took by the Dallas fans. They don't deserve a Super Bowl. They deserve to watch the game just like Tony Romo is, because they never put their full support behind him. He's the only quarterback leading his team to a championship game, and the fans are saying, when can we get Tony Romo in? Well, they can all buy a ticket like Tony Romo and watch the game. I just want to say that there's something about Rodgers and his ability to close. I kind of feel like he made up for the time they lost the last second game to San Francisco. They also lost the last second game to Seattle several seasons ago. And just last year, they lost the last second overtime, lost to Arizona. So they deserve to go that far. If you're looking at the Packers, he was 28 of 43. He did have an interception, 356 yards against the Dallas defense. And Prescott, as a rookie, was 24 of 38. He did have a pick, over 302 yards passing against Green Bay. Just impressed with that man. And half of the fans in Dallas were against him because they want to see a white guy watch the game with them at home, and that's what they're going to get. But Big C, so much said about football. A great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday.
in the last few seconds, I just want to have you close it out the way you always do. Great basketball tonight, Golden State and Cleveland. But the NFL playoffs, if you don't like this, you don't like NFL football. It's just been a great way to watch football. These close games. Very impressed, by the way, the Packers, when they had to win, they did not take their foot off the gas the way Dallas did at Philadelphia. Your thoughts going into the championship weekend, Big C?
Well, Charlton, this championship weekend has a lot of similarities to last year's championship weekend. When you go in and you look at the final four quarterbacks, okay, Charlton?
Yeah.
Last year, 3 of the 4 quarterbacks that went into that finals weekend represented 10 Super Bowls, okay? Represented starting in 10 Super Bowls. The only quarterback that had not been to a Super Bowl was Cam Newton.
Wow.
He made it to the Super Bowl last year. That same number represents this year also, Charlton, where 3 of the 4 quarterbacks represent 10 Super Bowl starts. You know, in this final weekend, the only one that hasn't made it, Matt Ryan.
Wow.
Will history repeat itself twice? You know, so that's what you have to look at. But, you know, you're going to have Green Bay, you know, the hottest team in football playing against the highest scoring team in football in Atlanta for the final time in the Georgia Dome.
Yeah.
You got New England. You know, a tough place to play. We've just seen that Pittsburgh can play in the cold. But can they handle this complicated offense that New England can run at any time and throw at you? And can they run that same way against New England's defense that's been able to stop opponents? I'm looking for a great weekend of pro football, Charlton. Once again, you know, the Super Bowl, the championship games getting to the Super Bowl are always exciting. We have quarterbacks that have been there. Ben Roethlisberger's been there 3 times.
Yeah.
Okay? Tom Brady's been there 6. All right?
Wow.
This is what we're looking at. Aaron Rodgers been there once. Is it time to go back for a second time and submit his legacy, or will Matt Ryan finally get that monkey off his back?
Well, Big C, I tell you, I love this time of year. It's just wonderful. The weather's perfect for football. The fans are crazy about football. We came off a great national championship game with Alabama and Clemson, and now we have the NFL playoffs are here. I want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide. Follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 media network in the United States. And we always say there's never any excuse for any domestic violence against women. Let's not tolerate that anymore. If you ever see a woman in trouble, just call 911. No one should have to deal with that garbage on her own. And as we always tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. And we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.